everyone. Today we're going to be looking at how to transfer content from an old subject guide to a new subject guide template. In order to do this, Julia Main has volunteered to allow me to use her grade 3 science guide as an example. The first place to start is to pull up the various documents that we need to refer to in order to do this exercise. For me, as I'm not the owner of the grade 3 science guide, I won't be looking in the same place as all of you. You would normally go to LibGuides shortcuts and then click on Edit Existing Guide and search for the name of the guide that you're going to work on. I'm going to be pulling up Julia's guide by going to Content Guides. So here we go. I'm going to search by main, and I can see here is the grade 3 science guide. The next thing that I'm going to need as a point of reference, in case I stumble, is to have the guidelines and procedures. So I need to remove Julia's name in order to get access to all of the guides. And I'm going to type in guidelines, and there we go, the Virtual Learning Commons Guidelines and Procedures. Click on that. Now the first thing I want to do to actually set up the guide is to create a copy of the template. To do that, I go back to my home or dashboard, and I scroll down to where it says Create Guide. And I click on that. The next thing I do is decide if I'm starting fresh or if I'm using a guide that already exists in the system. As this is a subject guide, I'm going to be using the template, which is copy content / layout from an existing guide. The templates are local guides. They're created within the VLC opposed to the whole SpringShare community. So I go to select a guide, and I look for the template that I want to use, which in this case is the 3 to 6 subject guide template, and I copy it. The first thing I do once I have the template selected is to change the name so that I don't get confused as to what the guide is that I'm working on. It's going to end up being the grade 3 science guide. However, it's in progress. It's something that I'm working on. So we're requesting that everyone please put in progress at the beginning of the name of their guide. This will help us to distinguish between the old and the new guide that's in the system. At the same time, this is Julia's old guide, so I'm going to click on this tab as it's open in my browser and click on the name, and then I'm going to enter Z. We enter Z to show that it's the old guide in the system, and that way when we go to content guides, all the old guides will drop to the bottom of the list. Okay, next thing I want to do is select the group. I'm going to click on here and see what my options are. This is an elementary level guide, as it's grade 3 science. So I'm going to click on elementary. Oops. There we go. And I'm not assigning a password. I'm actually going to assign my description later once I've entered all the content in the guide. And I'm going to click select the type of guide. It's not a general purpose, it's a subject guide. So I select that there. And those are all of my options right now. So I'm going to create guide. Alright, so now we have a verbatim copy of the template. The next thing we want to do is set up the tabs or the pages for each strand of the curriculum. I have Julia's old guide here as a point of reference, so I'm going to click here and see the first strand of the curriculum is called Growth and Changes in Plants. So I go back and move that so I don't get mixed up. Growth and Changes in Plants. I go to Page Properties, enter here, Growth and Changes in Plants. Save. Now, I have the first strand. However, there's multiple other strands, and I want to maintain these instructions as well as the mapped icons, as the final versions of the template now have the mapped icons in them. So to do that, I want to copy this particular page again and again and again until I have each strand of the curriculum represented at the top. So I'm going to click on the plus sign, and then select Reuse Existing Page. Now the system asked me to select the guide from which I wish to reuse a page, and this is called In Progress Grade 3 Science, so I'm going to click that. And then I select the page. It's the growth and changes in plants. And the next thing is I want to change the name of this page so that it lines up with the curriculum. And it is called Forces Causing Movement. I'm going to Forces Causing Movement. There we go. And it's really important to note at this point that I'm not mapping the page. I want to simply copy it. So I click on the copy button here. And you can see the explanation tells us that create a copy of this page rather than linking to the original. Basically what this means is that it's like a photocopy. It's a one-time snapshot of what the page looked like. And that means, as I press save here, if I were to create changes to the growth and changes in plant strand, because I've only copied it, those changes won't appear under the forces causing movement strand. If it were mapped, this would be really problematic because anytime I entered information in this page, it would automatically be replicated in the forces causing movement, and we want them to be different because they're actually about different subject matter. The contrast is that these icons are mapped, and they're mapped from the reusable content guide that is within VLC. The reason why they're mapped is because we want them to be the exact same across the entire system. So at any point down the road, it's possible that we may want to make a change, either delete an icon, add an icon, well, perhaps not add an icon, but change an existing icon, change the words, change an email, however it may be. And by these being mapped to the reusable content guide, we can create that change on the reusable content guide, and it will automatically be generated wherever that icon has been mapped to. So in each of the subject guide templates. Okay, so that's the difference between copying and mapping. We're going to finish creating these pages. So the next one, we do the same thing, reuse an existing page. Reusing it from the In Progress Grade 3 Science Guide. And we want to reuse either growth and changes in plants or forces causing movement. It doesn't really matter which one. And I'm going to change the name, and the name is Soils in the Environment. Soils in the Environment. And then I create a copy. Save. Let's see, there's still another one I do believe. Yes, strong and stable structures. So we use existing page from the In Progress guide. And we're going to copy this one, and we're going to call it strong and stable structures. There we go. Copy. Save. So now you can see each strand looks exactly the same. It simply has the instructions and the mapped icons. Okay. So now we're going to look back at Julia's old one, and I just want to point out that you can see here how there's a difference between the templates and the old subject guides. In the old subject guides, this worked perfectly well to have a page dedicated to teachers and parents, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, in the new templates, we're not creating a separate page for that information, but that doesn't mean you can't still use that information. So in terms of quote-unquote transferring content, what this means is you simply go through your guide and you identify those materials that are still in line with the curriculum, and if the curriculum hasn't changed and been updated, then they should all still apply, and you make sure that the links are working, and you simply reuse what is in this guide and place it into the appropriate places as outlined in the instructions. So for example, on the start page, we scroll down a bit and it says parent resources right here. So provide 2 or more links of resources for parents. This can include advice, on working with children in this age group, ideas of activities that can be done at home, or suggestions of other types of help that their children can seek out, etc. So resources that are of interest to parents, particularly as it relates to science. And we're aiming for the grade 3 audience. So in here, Julia, what you could do is you simply insert some of these. So you'd say add resource, right? And you click on your link. This is because back here under your for parents and teachers, these are all various URLs and links that you wish to reuse. You'd simply use this information and copy it in here and then save. An added feature that was brought to my attention by Merle actually is that you can even assign thumbnail images to go with your URLs, which is really kind of neat. It makes it graphic and more visual for the students. So to do this, you would find an image, perhaps from that website or Google Images, that represents what's found on that page. You'd save it to your image library and then insert it here. Okay, and then once you've inserted the resources that you wish to use, you simply delete the instructions in this section, and you do that by clicking on this button here and then delete. Okay, I'll also point out that as you will have hopefully had an opportunity to look at the SpringShare videos, you will have noted that what's really unique about LibGuides 2 is that you can curate your resources by topical matter or subject matter opposed to just resource format, which is really great. So that means here, Julia, if you have parent resources that are not just URLs, but they are, for example, a book that you would recommend, or if there's a document that you wish to upload, right here, document or file, and you save it, it could be an activity that parents could do with their kids at home. And various things like that, you can insert all those various resources under parent resources, and you don't have to save them in different boxes. Also, I'm going to help continue to insert the information required by the template here. So I can see that this is where the LCI profile box is going to be. So in order to insert Julia's profile box, it would need to be under her ownership. So I'm going to see if I can change the ownership to her at this point. To do that, I do it at the guide level, which means I select this particular gear looking icon up here. And you can see it says guide editors. So I could add Julia as an editor at this point, but I can't add her as the owner because I'm working on the guide. So I'm going to have to do that shortly. Alright, so the last part of setting up the guide is to ensure that all of the procedures have been followed. And those again are outlined in the guide setup procedures. So we've got the template copied, but you know that there's a description that's required to be written. We've assigned the type already. We're going to be assigning subjects. So let's take a look at that. Here's where you'd insert your subject. I click on the pencil, and I'm going to look up science. And you can see here my options. There's grade 1 to 8 science, grade 9 to 12 science, and grade 9 to 12 social sciences, which is not what we want. We want 1 to 8 science. So we'll click on that and save. And here's the place where the friendly URL would go, which is also covered in the setup procedures. So I'm going to insert 3 science, because that's the format that we're to use, your grade level, and then the subject name, and all in lowercase. Save. And there are a few other things that the procedures wish for us to fill in. I'm just going to put in the description, this is where I insert my description. This is something that I would likely do close to last, once I've already inserted all of the information that I wish to put in my guide so that I can capture it in the description. And the last thing also would be to add tags. And how to add tags is also covered in the procedures. Basically, we want the tags to be as specific as possible so that it fuels the search in a meaningful way. If a tag were, for example, to be science, and every single person who had a science guide inserted the word science, it wouldn't be very effective because it wouldn't make the grade 3 science guide stand out. Also, we know that the search is fueled by the metadata that's inserted with the name of the guide and the description. And because it already says grade 3 science in the guide, we don't need to add that as a tag as well. However, items that would be important would either be perhaps the name of the strands, but it's only add the names of the strands if they are unique to the grade 3 science guide, because if these are the same strands that exist for every science guide from grade 1 to 6 or grade 1 to 8, then again the same thing will happen, that every single guide from grade 1 to 8 would pop up in a search under strong and stable structures. So what you would do is simply use meaningful language based on the content you insert here by looking at the curriculum. So for example, growth and changes in plants. It's possible by, let's take a look at Julia's guide here. Perhaps there's something specific like BBC Science Clips, growing plants. If that were an item that you inserted here, Julia, you could simply say something like how to grow plants or how plants grow. Something like that might be a tag, or plant growth cycle, whatever the terminology is used in that resource. Okay, so now that this is all set up, I'm just going to transfer it over to Julia, and I'll show you how to do that in case in some day in the future it may be something you wish to do. So I'm going to go to Content Guides, and right now this guide is under my name, so I'm going to type in Hearns and Science. There we go, and we can see in progress grade 3 science, and I'm going to go over to where it says actions and change guide owner, and I'm going to add Julia's name. Okay, and so now if I was to look up main, I would see that she has the grade 3 science in progress and grade 3 science, the old guide. Perfect. And we can see that much of the criteria requested in the guide setup procedures is here already, the friendly URL, the group, and the type. All right, well, thanks everyone for joining me today, and please be sure to watch the rest of our training videos to learn more how-tos to set up your guides and prepare them for launch. If you have any questions, please let us know. Thanks. Bye.